it's just
in Dublin.
Seamus McAleer, his character was.
So, yeah, well, no, him himself, his character. Anyway.
No, but he plays
a character in Fair City.
He plays Seamus McAleer, whatever his original name is.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I know that. But so anyway, that had brought us to the attention of people who were in Dublin, and then Pat Kenny had this thing. There was a program there where there was something happened in England then about a mother looking for a sexual partner for her son. Anybody pick up on that? And why wasn't it out there really? Because they're fairly liberal sort of mindset in England sometimes. But anyway, it generated this thing, and there were waves that came over the water sort of thing, and people were going, well, Pat Kenny picked up on it, and the Inclusion Island, and there's a Connecting People Network is a learning disability friendship peer group sort of group. And then we'd done this research, so people asked, would we come along? And myself, Jer, who's a great presenter, and another woman who's actually on that video, Kathleen Ryan, who's in a relationship. And we were going up in the train, and I'd been given the brief by the programme's researcher. It's going to be about this and the sexual offences law, and people not being allowed to have relationships because there's a law, and we're only just finding this out. So, well, actually there's people who are coming up in the train who actually don't know that, so I'm going to have to talk to them on the train on the way up. I know that doesn't sound very professional, but I mean, I couldn't actually go into the studio without being known and not actually mention it.
Well, it didn't mean wanting to
I can see them now looking at me going, what? I couldn't believe it. And why was I never told this? Is it because I have Down syndrome? That's one of the things that one guy said. There was a sort of actually anger bubbling beneath indignation and bemusement. Anyway, so the research is enabling us to understand this, to find out about this. It's leading us on a path to find out information. And so we were actually asked then to go to the Law Reform Commission and give our feedback on the research we've done.
And this is where Gerald, myself and Rob went up and met.
I don't know if anybody could, no, that's actually, I think she's the only full-time commissioner, Patricia Ricard-Clark. And that's Brian, he's the chief researcher. That's our friend Jen.
That's another
Marcel O'Brien, I think her name is, And so she's a researcher, and then so we did. So they're us with psychologists through the National Federation framework. We did this input, and we called for the repeal of the law. We said this is wrong. What are you saying? We're giving training to work, encouragement to get houses.
As I said, we were encouraged to work. We were encouraged. Everything else was provided for us to do. Let's say, like the Child Support Employment Service or the Limerick equivalent. That's probably down here. We were encouraged to go and get jobs or stuff like that. And yet, when it came to a Sexual Offences Act, there was nothing to tell us that
it's
criminal offence, right?
And I don't want to get down to graphic detail, but it's only specific acts that are forbidden, penetrative acts, and everything else is sort of like not in there. So it's all a bit half-hearted and hit and miss, and it's not really. And what it demonstrated, and what this new process is, that people are actually obviously have never been spoken to, because nobody actually. Always reminds me of the thing about lesbian sort of legislation in Britain, and Queen Victoria just couldn't believe it would happen, so they never actually made any legislation about it. It was excluded because they couldn't, and it's almost the same sort of mindset. Well, people won't want to have sex because they're only children, really, aren't they? I don't know. It's that sort of thing. So I've got a 2-minute signal now from Nancy, so we can't delay you guys any further, but I think what it boils down to here, John, you're rushing getting to the end of the essence of what we're saying is that the convention actually says that people should consult and actively involve people with disability through representative organisations. And actually, again, for whatever the reasons, paternalism and the way services are organised to some extent, there is an Inclusion Island group, but there isn't a representative national forum that people could even say they'd consulted with. Now, there's something called SHASF down in the southeast, which got some POBL funding for 2 years and was up running, and then the funding got drawn. So and the minister does actually and has consulted with SHASF, but we are now part of this fairly strong movement. I'd say we've got a fairly good chance of in the next 6 to a year of getting this up, a national forum that people should be consulted with, and it is part of ratifying the treaty, because you can't say you're involving people if you haven't even got the structure there to make it happen. And I suppose that's what we've learned. Not alone that the legislation isn't there, but the structure to enact legislation in a way that's being prescribed isn't there as well. So this is what we're calling for, Independent National Advocacy Platform, and we're now working with Inclusion Ireland, SHASF and these other representative bodies, with basically on the steering group to make this a reality. So that's that.
No,
you won't like this, but anyway, I think Joe's got to tell his piece here, because I think it does tell you academics need to listen.
This was a psychologist's report that was written about me back when I was about 17, 18 years of age, telling me or said about me that I wouldn't be able for work outside a sheltered workshop ever.
Yes.
And I just happened to come across this when I was shown.
Well, access and freedom of information, stuff that's written about you're entitled to know.
Yeah, but I just happened to come across it recently. I didn't even realise that was there.
Yes. It's not a candidate for future employment, nor will it be benefit from realistic training leading him to open employment. He's run his own cafe since then. It would be only simple replacement in a sheltered situation.
That information that was written by that individual, which I won't name, was he didn't spend time enough to know what I was good at, because he wasn't the person that I would see on a day-to-day basis. Yes. So anybody that writes information like that without consulting a person with a disability hasn't really seen the potential of an individual. They might only see me for about half an hour.
Yes.
Or 2 hours.
Yes.
But that's basically why I put up that piece of
that's powerful, man. That's great. So, fair play to you for putting yourself out there. I think it's now people have got life goals and they can start thinking about things like everybody else, relationships, jobs, and broadcasting publicly or whatever, or getting your voice out there, and standing on the mountain and being a pinnacle that people can reach towards and not get out from underneath the ground, that sort of way. And these are some of the qualifications that Joe has now.
No, this one is in particular. I work with the EMC. It's a youth group in East Clare, which they're a group of teenagers, and they give us that certificate in 2009. And I think when I work with people who are going through life changes of their own, it gives me great opportunity. I'm also involved in a few other things in the community as well, but to have something from teenagers and stuff like that is very, very important to me. It does show that I have participated in the community, and I can participate in the community regardless of what an individual can write about an individual who doesn't spend time on the ground with them. And I do think anybody who writes reports, make sure that you include a person with a disability if you're writing about them, because if they happen to come across the report and something is written about them that they didn't know about, they can get very angry, and they won't trust you either again if you ever want to go back and ask them for their permission in the near future. Thank you for listening.